We see a future where intelligence is a utility like electricity or water, and people buy it from us on a meter.
OpenAI began with a promise: build artificial intelligence for the benefit of all of humanity. Not for one company, not for shareholders, for humanity. They wrote it into their founding charter. They made it the legal foundation of everything they built. Then ChatGPT came out.
I think this has implications from everything from the high schoolers and the college kids and how they do their homework to how Google may or may not dominate search in the future. What's coming?
And within days, it became clear this was not another tech demo. It was a product the world wanted. Students used it to finish papers at midnight. Doctors used it to research diagnoses they had never encountered before. Programmers automated months of work in a single week. For the first time, ordinary people had direct access to something that felt like machine intelligence. That was real. What OpenAI built was genuinely historic. But the moment everyone started using it, one question became impossible to ignore. If this technology is powerful enough to change how the world thinks, who exactly controls it? In November 2023, OpenAI's own board tried to answer that question. They fired Sam Altman. 72 hours later, he was back. The board was gone, and that single sequence told you almost everything you need to know. That was not the whole scandal. It was the warning sign. And by 2026, Sam Altman wasn't talking about apps anymore. He was meeting presidents, negotiating for power plants, and helping design the kind of infrastructure that could run the next century. Sam Altman was born in St. Louis to a father who developed real estate and a mother who was a dermatologist. He was, by every account, an unusual child. His biography records that at 2 years old, while other children played on swings, Sam sat on a bench and told his mother he preferred to watch. At 8, he was given a computer and almost immediately learned to program it. He said he remembered thinking even then that someday the computer was going to learn to think. At 13, he transferred to a prestigious private school where connections mattered as much as grades. He enrolled at Stanford and left after 2 years, not because he failed, but because Silicon Valley came looking for him. His first company was called Loopt, a location-sharing social network, the kind of product that only works if enormous numbers of people use it simultaneously. Altman raised $5 million, then raised more, kept the app alive for 7 years through periodic injections of outside money. He insisted publicly that Loopt had massive user numbers. When a journalist reported the actual figure, approximately 500 active users, Altman told them it was 100 times more than that and promised evidence. He never provided it. When Loopt was sold, the company that bought it immediately shut it down and used none of the technology. Altman walked away with millions. Peter Thiel, who would later describe Altman as someone who should be treated as more of a messiah figure, gave him money to start his own venture fund. Altman also took over Y Combinator, the influential startup accelerator where Loopt had originally been funded. He promised he would not invest in YC companies through his personal fund. Up to 75% of that fund ended up in YC companies. These were the early patterns. A product that never quite worked but attracted millions anyway. Promises about numbers that didn't hold up. A rule about conflicts of interest that quietly disappeared. The pattern was already there. Persuasion first, proof later. By 2014, Altman was embedded at the center of Silicon Valley's investment infrastructure. Elon Musk had grown alarmed. Google had acquired DeepMind and was pulling the best AI talent into a profit-driven company with no accountability to anyone outside it. Musk believed that if one company controlled artificial general intelligence, civilization might not survive the outcome. He needed a counterweight. He found one in Altman's network. In December 2015, OpenAI was launched as a non-profit research laboratory. The co-founders included Altman, Musk, Ilya Sutskever from Google Brain, and Greg Brockman, who had been CTO of Stripe. The mission statement was extraordinary in its ambition, a primary fiduciary duty to humanity. The prohibition was explicit: no enabling uses of AI that harm humanity or unduly concentrate power. In 2018, Musk left.
Yeah, I fully admit to being a huge idiot here.
The board had rejected his proposal to take over as CEO and attach the company to Tesla. Without his funding, the remaining team realized they were running out of money. The non-profit model could not support the compute costs needed to compete. In 2019, OpenAI pivoted. It created a for-profit subsidiary with a 100 times return cap for investors. Microsoft invested $1 billion. The charity had become a business. What most coverage of OpenAI misses is what happened to the man who walked out. Elon Musk was not just a disappointed investor. He was one of the founding architects of the mission. He had given $38 million. He had co-written the charter. He believed the nonprofit structure was the only safeguard against one company owning AGI. Years later, he filed suit. His lawyers argued that OpenAI had breached a charitable trust, that executives had unjustly enriched themselves with billions built on what had been pledged as a public benefit organization. He sought more than $130 billion returned to the nonprofit. He sought the removal of Altman and Brockman. He sought a reversion to nonprofit structure that would have ended any IPO. OpenAI responded that his claims had been filed too late and that the real motive was competitive, not principled. The jury ultimately sided with OpenAI. Musk had filed too late. The legal threat to the IPO was removed. But the trial did something OpenAI could not undo. For 3 weeks, the founding promise was evidence in a federal courtroom. The question of who had betrayed the mission, and whether there had ever been a real mission to betray, was placed into the permanent public record. Musk lost the case, but he succeeded in putting the founding promise on trial. He announced he would appeal. OpenAI moved fast after Musk left. GPT-2 in 2019, so powerful the team initially refused to fully release it, concerned about what it might enable. GPT-3 in 2020, 100 times larger, capable of generating text nearly indistinguishable from human writing. DALL-E in 2021. And then on November 30th, 2022, OpenAI published a tweet with 2 words: try ChatGPT. 1 million users in 5 days. One of the fastest growing consumer products in tech history. A journalist described it as the moment that divided time into before AI and after AI. Every company in the world suddenly needed to understand what this was. Every government, every investor. And here's what I think matters. This part was not theater. A student in Lagos got his thesis reviewed at midnight. A doctor in rural Ohio researched a diagnosis she had never encountered. A programmer in Warsaw automated 3 months of work in a single week. OpenAI made artificial intelligence feel personal, feel useful, feel like something that belonged to everyone. Whatever came after, that moment was not nothing. That moment was history. There was one thing many people didn't know about ChatGPT's launch. Altman had hidden its development from OpenAI's own board. He took credit for its creation. He positioned himself to receive the recognition, the influence, the power, and it worked until it didn't. In the fall of 2023, Ilya Sutskever, OpenAI's co-founder and chief scientist, the man who had built the core technology behind most of what the company had accomplished, began compiling a document. He spent weeks collecting Slack messages, HR records, internal memos. He communicated with board members using messages set to disappear. He sent the final document, 52 pages, to the board. More than one board member who received it later described feeling terrified. The document opened with a phrase, "Sam exhibits a consistent pattern of." The very first item on the list was one word: lying.
The tech world has been thrown into chaos over the weekend when the company that gave us ChatGPT fired its CEO.
On November 17th, 2023, a Friday, the board fired Sam Altman. He learned about it on a video call. OpenAI's CTO, Mira Murati, sent him a message. "Sam, this is very bad." When he asked if he could come to the office, she replied, "They don't want you to." What followed was 3 days that no corporate governance textbook would have prepared anyone for. Microsoft made clear it would support whatever Altman needed. Approximately 700 OpenAI employees signed a letter threatening to resign and follow Altman to Microsoft if the board did not reinstate him. Ilya Sutskever, The man who had compiled the case for removal and voted to fire Altman now voted to reinstate him. He later described it in federal court as a Hail Mary to prevent the company's destruction. On Monday, Altman returned. The board that had fired him was gone. A new board was appointed from the Silicon Valley and finance establishment. The former co-CEO of Salesforce, the former Treasury Secretary of the United States, the former CEO of the Gates Foundation. Altman's power was greater than it had been before the firing. The new board inherited a company with a growing problem. The safety infrastructure that had defined OpenAI's public identity was quietly collapsing. OpenAI had publicly pledged 20% of its computing power to the Superalignment team, the group responsible for ensuring that advanced AI systems did not go catastrophically wrong. The actual allocation, according to internal accounts, was between 1 and 2%. On the oldest hardware with the worst chips. When the team leader complained, he was told to stop pressing the point. By 2024, the Superalignment team had been shut down entirely. The mission alignment team was shut down. The CTO resigned. The chief research officer resigned. The VP of research left. A co-founder departed to join Anthropic. Nearly half of all safety researchers walked out. OpenAI changed its mission statement 6 times. The most recent version removed the word safely. In January 2024, while Altman was speaking at the World Economic Forum in Davos, someone quietly deleted OpenAI's explicit prohibition on military and weapons applications from its website. The Intercept noticed and asked about it. OpenAI said the rewrite was to make things clearer. 2 years later, OpenAI announced a major contract with the Department of Defense. The announcement was titled, "Our Agreement with the Department of War." In January 2025, Sam Altman stood beside the President of the United States and announced Stargate, a project worth up to $500 billion. Not a new model, not a chatbot, physical infrastructure, data centers, power, land, compute. The kind of assets nations usually build. Trump called it the largest AI infrastructure project in history, and framed it as a race the United States could not afford to lose to China. Safety concerns also moved from internal debates into courts. In Florida, families of victims of a campus shooting filed a lawsuit against OpenAI, alleging that ChatGPT had interacted with the shooter in the months before the attack without flagging anything to authorities. OpenAI denied responsibility. The Florida Attorney General opened a separate investigation. The accountability question had moved from policy papers into courtrooms. OpenAI has also begun shaping how its own story gets told. In 2026, it acquired Technology Brothers, one of Silicon Valley's most watched technology shows, reportedly for more than $100 million. A company built to develop intelligence was now also in the business of narrating it.
Enjoyed a tremendous amount and is exactly what we're going to continue to do.
Yeah.
If you want to continue.
Yeah, so she says, so rather than trying to recreate that ourselves, it made a lot of sense just to bring them in, support what they're doing, and help them scale while keeping what makes them special. A core part of this is editorial independence. We can say whatever we want because we're live and we don't need to run anything through anyone.
As of 2025, OpenAI is still among the leaders of frontier artificial intelligence. GPT-4o and the O-series models set benchmarks that other systems work hard to match. Microsoft Copilot, powered by OpenAI, has reached hundreds of millions of users. OpenAI's products are embedded in enterprise workflows, government systems, and daily life in ways that were impossible to imagine 3 years ago. Not every bet has worked. In 2026, OpenAI shut down Sora, its video generation app, less than a year after it topped the App Store. Sora had earned about $2 million in its lifetime. Running it cost $50 million a day. OpenAI framed it not as failure, but as a shift toward the infrastructure and enterprise scale that now define where the company puts its resources. But for the first time, OpenAI is no longer the only story. Anthropic is raising billions and building its own frontier models. Google DeepMind is deploying Gemini at a scale no startup can match. Meta has released open-source models that anyone can run. Elon Musk's XAI has billions in funding and Grok inside every X account. The gap that felt infinite in 2022 is closing. Whether OpenAI can hold its lead through an IPO, a governance crisis, and a trial is the question nobody can answer yet. At the center of all of this stood a man who, in May 2023, had testified before the United States Senate under oath.
You make a lot of money, do you?
I paid enough for health insurance. I have no equity in OpenAI.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You need a lawyer.
I need a what?
You need a lawyer or an agent.
I'm doing this because I love it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Kennedy.
Evidence entered into federal court proceedings in 2026 established that Altman holds an indirect stake in OpenAI via a Y Combinator and personal investments worth more than $2 billion in companies that do business directly with OpenAI. Helion Energy, where Altman owns roughly a third of the company, according to court filings, has signed a power purchase agreement to sell energy to OpenAI. Stripe, where his reported stake is worth over $600 million, processes OpenAI's payments. Cerebra's Systems, where an OpenAI compute deal includes warrants for up to 10% of the chipmaker, creates an arrangement where OpenAI's purchasing decisions directly enrich Altman's personal portfolio. The board that fired him had spent weeks documenting this. When they pressed him to acknowledge a pattern of deception, multiple witnesses later reported his response. He said, "I cannot change my personality." A board member described what that meant. What it meant was, I have this trait where I lie to people, and I am not going to stop. In federal court in 2026, Mira Murati gave sworn video testimony. She said, "My concern was about Sam saying one thing to one person and completely the opposite to another person."
Mira Murati described Sam Altman as deceptive. She said he often told different people completely different things. But despite all of that, she still pushed for him to return.
She testified that Altman created chaos, pitted senior executives against each other to maintain control, and falsely claimed the legal department had cleared an AI model to bypass the safety board. Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft and OpenAI's largest investor, characterized the November 2023 governance crisis with a single phrase: amateur city. Reuters reported that even in winning the Musk lawsuit, OpenAI faced what it described as significant reputational cost. The trial had placed governance flaws and credibility concerns around Altman into the permanent public record. Musk did not win the case, but the case made the questions permanent. A former OpenAI employee who had publicly criticized the company and had been named as a potential witness in major copyright lawsuits was found dead in San Francisco. His family disputes the official ruling. When Altman was asked about it on television, he described it as a tragedy and referred to the official findings. This belongs in the story not as a mystery, but as part of the wider trust crisis around the people building this technology. OpenAI is reportedly preparing for a potential IPO at a valuation that could approach $1 trillion. But the company is still spending aggressively, and reported projections suggest profitability may still be years away. Most of its biggest investors are also its biggest suppliers. Microsoft runs the cloud infrastructure. NVIDIA supplies the chips. Amazon provides additional cloud capacity. The money flows in one door and out the other, through a circular arrangement that makes the financial picture look larger than it may be. In 2026, that hunger for compute spilled into global markets, pushing memory chip prices sharply higher for everyone. Before ordinary investors get anywhere near the stock, reported financing terms suggested that some private investors could receive protections unavailable to ordinary public investors. Downside protection, seniority over other classes of shareholders, and early access to unreleased models. The public that OpenAI's charter once described as humanity will be offered none of that. If OpenAI joins a major stock index, every fund tracking it would be required to purchase the stock. 401k plans, pension funds, and the retirement savings of people who have never heard of Sam Altman would absorb shares in a company that has not yet turned a profit. The charter still reads, primary fiduciary duty to humanity. Sam Altman keeps guns, gold, and potassium iodide at his properties. He has a gas mask. He has land he can reach by air if civilization collapses. He later acknowledged that none of it would help if AGI went wrong. He described these preparations as a fun hobby. He is one of the few people with enormous influence over what the most powerful artificial intelligence systems in the world are used for. The charter says his primary fiduciary duty is to humanity. The safety teams are gone. The word safely is gone from the mission statement. The military ban was deleted from the website. The Pentagon has a contract. The most powerful man in artificial intelligence was fired by his own board on a Friday. 72 hours later, he was back with more power than before. The board was gone. And the first word on the 52-page document that described why he should have stayed gone, the first word on that list, is still in the evidence, still on the court record. Lying. OpenAI promised AI for humanity. Then it built the tool the world started depending on. Now it wants to meter intelligence like electricity or water. Altman said it himself.
We see a future where intelligence is a utility like electricity or water, and people buy it from us on a meter. If we don't have enough, we either can't sell it, or the price gets really high and it, kind of goes to rich people.
So the question is no longer whether OpenAI changed the future. It did. So if intelligence becomes a utility, who controls the meter and who gets cut off first?